Hello, it's Anthony Chadwick from the Webinar Vet, welcoming you to another episode of VETchat. Today is International E-Waste Day. So we're recording on actual E-Waste Day. Now people say, well, what on earth is E-Waste? E-Waste is basically old computers, old cables, telephones, tablets, etc., etc. And I'm really, really fortunate today to have Laura Crehan on with us, who is the head of operations at Repic, which have been working as a organisation to raise the profile of e-waste. It's obviously becoming a bigger and bigger problem. Laura, I'm going to say you don't look old enough to have 20 years of e-waste experience, but that's what you've told me you've got, 20 years.
Yes.
If you go back a bit further, I can remember the ZX Spectrum coming out and the Commodore, the first computers.
My brother had one of those,
Obviously, most people now have computers. They can have several computers. They can have old computers that are in cupboards and in lofts and things. Yeah. It's a massive, massive area. It's growing all the time. Give us a bit of an indication of what the progress we've made over the last 20 years you've been in it, because you've been, I would have thought, really very much at the beginning. And how are things moving?
Well, first of all, thank you for having us, Anthony. And you are right. I kind of landed myself in this industry pretty much from leaving school. It was a little bit of a detour for me. Went to college, decided it wasn't for me, and had to get a part-time job till the next enrolment. And luckily, I found myself working at a facility that was one of the first fridge plants in the UK to recycling fridges. This would have been 2003, 2004. So as I said, 20 years for me in this particular industry. And I can remember, things like the inception of the WE regulations, which kind of set about a whole change in that, we had to recycle items at treatment facilities. There was licensing that had to be in place. And over the years, we've made some real progress. We've celebrated a huge milestone recently at Repic, in that we've been around 20 years. And just seeing the amount of facilities now that are if you like, improving the recycling recovery rate, and really kind of the volumes in which that they're handling. I can remember, the UK just having 2 or 3 fridge recycling plants, and you look now and the amount of investment that's going on. We're definitely in a growth period, and I've no doubt in another 5 to 10 years we'll look back and think, how did we ever cope without all these facilities that we're now seeing come online?
Yeah, it's really interesting. Obviously, I've had a fascination in the environment pretty much all my life, and became a vet, and very much, wanting to encourage biodiversity. And then, of course, we all hear about carbon. This year, I did a circular economy certificate. So actually, circularity brings it all together, doesn't it? Across all of the levels, because we can be obsessive about carbon, but actually, the stat is that by 2050, there'll be more plastic in the ocean than fish if we don't do something about it. Yeah. So that sort of linear economy, of which is we produce, we reuse, we use, and then we throw away, has to change, doesn't it? And one of the stats that kind of disturbed me the most was the global circular economy was classed as being 9% circular in 2019, but by 2022, I think after the pandemic, it was down to 7%. But tell me a bit about, how are we doing stats-wise, within the UK, of picking up computers and then, repurposing or reusing or recycling?
To share some of the statistics we've got, and obviously International E-Waste Days, created by the WE Forum, and almost a quarter of end-of-life electricals end up in the household waste bin. So one of the initiatives of International E-Waste Days to get people going through their cupboards and actually considering where they should be putting these items. The statistic that I can share is that we've got 14 million tonnes of e-waste globally discarded with ordinary household waste. It's quite a frightening number if you think 14 million tonnes globally is going into the wrong place.
Globally, is that UK or globally?
Globally, it is. So
globally?
that's a global number. From a UK perspective, and this was something, a result of one of the material focus studies, we have £266 million worth of copper in the UK's unused and binned electricals. That's one of the reasons why we're trying to push International E-Waste Day this year in terms of the cable challenge. Everybody has that one drawer at home or cupboard where we've got cables, whereby, we'll save it because it just might come in handy in another few years' time. And if you think that value within the UK system is just staggering. And in terms of the household itself, the households have 38,449 copper cables hidden inside of those electricals. So you're getting down to a much granular detail as well on that one.
No, it's fantastic. And obviously that is, I think, the benefit of us rummaging around in those cupboards, as you say, with things that we're never going to use again. And if we can actually bring them together, then they'll make a massive difference. And I think that 266 million tons is
£266 million worth
£60
of
million
copper.
is a sort of yearly number as well.
Yes, yeah.
That's
so
it's a big number, isn't it? It's $250 million.
It is, and especially when you think we're in a cost of living crisis, we're looking at the UK, we're no longer within the EU, and you're kind of thinking of, how we as an economy how we can thrive. You mentioned the Royal Mint earlier. It's companies like these that are investing in the UK, trying to, do more and add value. And it's no wonder when you think that much of a value is sat in our cupboards at home.
Yeah.
One thing that's probably worth bearing in mind, that obviously, what we all have a perception of what is electrical waste. And I think if we were to simplify it and we said everything with a plug or battery should be recycled, but then you've then got to think, from a circular economy perspective, how do we really adjust to that when a lot of manufacturing is outside of the UK? So right now we've got all these plants recycling end of life items, but then the actual, the components that comes out of that process are things like you've just mentioned, the plastics, some of the critical earth materials, things like palladium, copper, gold, and so on. A lot of these have to then leave the UK to go back into new products. So we have got a challenge as an industry to, if you like, close the loop on that circularity of items.
Yeah.
So it is a challenge. It's easier in some categories than others. So, for example, we're looking at, as an industry, we're looking at some of the plastic side, and we're looking at whether or not, for example, there's some vacuum cleaners, we can actually put plastics back into that manufacturing within the UK. But then on a wider topic, it's very difficult to put food grade plastic that comes from the recycled item, because there's a grade that you need to be at to put that back into a new product. So there are some real challenges, and I guess every item has its own intricate detail as well.
We talk about the hierarchy of circularity as well, and recycling is actually quite low down, isn't it? Because if we can reuse or repurpose, and I know you do take computers in and you can upgrade them, and maybe they were using an industry which needed a high level machine, but actually we could put that into a school where perhaps a slightly lower level machine is acceptable. Is that something that you're doing at Repic?
It is, yes. So we are kind of, because of some of the products that we see coming back. So if you look at some of the domestic items, so things like refrigerators, dishwashers, your large items from a household, we have treatment providers that will assess that before it goes into recycling. So there'll be 10 and 30-point assessments to make sure that the item has more life left in it and that it can have a suitable warranty before it's reused or resold. You then also have another element of the reuse in that waste hierarchy, whereby it's not actually become a waste, first of all. So just like you were saying there, then we have initiatives and companies that will try and prolong the life. So for example, the items that we're recording from today, such as a laptop, a computer, and so on, we'll find that, we want a faster item, or we'll want something that looks a little bit flashy or we'll want that upgrade. If it's not come to end of life, there are facilities out there that you can send that item to. They'll do health checks on it. They'll work out how much longer you could get out of that item, and they'll repurpose it. They'll look at things like putting it into schools. They'll, sometimes startup companies. There are a range of options out there that, we should all kind of be mindful of. And I think it's a growing trend as well, because, you look at, the 20 somethings of the time, and they're much more switched on than we used to be in terms of keeping hold of an item and keeping it in life for a little bit longer.
Yeah, it's a bit like my iPhone, obviously we're encouraged to go for the latest model because it's got a better camera, etc., etc.
Yeah.
But the longer we can prolong the life of things, the better. Similarly with the computer the other computer I've got, that needs more memory. It's got a knackered battery. You can take the battery out. That can have the lithium removed.
Yeah.
But then you've got another year or two left with the computer. So we should be thinking about prolonging life of products. That's a really important part of circularity.
I definitely agree, and I think also when you look at, we've been in a cost of living crisis. It's becoming much more of a trend now to, refurbish and hold on to items a lot longer. I mean, I think if you look at the average life of a mobile phone contract now, where we all used to look forward to our upgrade in the next 18 months, much more now we see where a phone contract will actually be for 3 years, and that's actually keeping mobile phones in the system for a little bit longer. So I think we're all kind of adjusting to changing our habits and coming away from that throwaway society that I think if you look back in the last 5 or 10 years, we've had a very big increase in terms of items going onto the market and coming back off too soon. And that is also, as consumers, as businesses like veterinary clinics, we all have that responsibility to think before we move on to the next item.
And I love the fact that you started off with refrigerators and freezers, because of course the danger is that they've also got the chemicals in them that are very much sort of very heavy level greenhouse gases, aren't they?
They have CFCs, pentane, the oil element in there. I think, when you're thinking of a business and what to do with your waste, if you take one step back and think of yourself as a householder, it's very difficult now to get rid of a fridge. If you like, you've got to pay the person that you're buying the new item from to take it away, or you've got to pay your council as a bulky waste collection to get that collected. And they're very different to your typical dishwashers, washing machines, because, that those type of items, they don't have as many of they don't have that element of CFC and gases to be dealing with. And what happens with them is they'll go off to scrap metal companies. And we, as an industry, we've got to close in on that, because all items should be going through approved and authorised treatment facilities so that we can capture what's really coming off the market. At Repit, that's one of our key things, to monitor what we're placing on the market, not just our producers, but as an industry, but also looking at what's coming off and the rate that they're coming off the market as well. And fridges has always kind of been quite a steady growing trend. How many of us now have a spare fridge in our shed at home? We've got the alcohol in our home bar. There's so many different trends now, in terms of how you keep your house. Look at TVs. What happens with your old TV? You move that into the spare room, or you move it into the garage or the home gym. So TVs aren't coming back off the market at the same rate that they used to, because trends are changing again.
Yeah, no, it's really fascinating. And we had our kitchen done last Christmas. Wrong time. Well, it took longer than they said it would. We finally got it all done. But
I could second that. I did exactly the same in the run up to Christmas.
They said it was going to be a week or two. It wasn't. And actually not having a kitchen or a functional kitchen is really quite tough, isn't it?
Yes, I feel your pain. And I must say, do you know what? I can guarantee you'll probably agree with me here. Did you get the slow cooker, or did you, there's a lot of items now, smaller items, like some of the food cookers, those type of smaller items. You rely on those when you've not got a fully functioning kitchen. So I think that is the interesting one, because kitchens aren't just kitchens anymore. We've moved from an oven, a hob, and we've now got blenders, toasty makers. There's so many small items now that we add into those kitchens.
It was nice though, because we were able. The kitchen was just looking a bit tired. It was 15, 16 years old, but we were able to, some of the doors had started to bubble and things, but we were able to upcycle those. So somebody came and took them, perhaps to put into a house or a rental, I don't know, then the dishwasher and the washing machine, we were able to find a new home for the big
that's good.
range that we had. Because what we were doing was we were taking gas out as we try and decarbonise. So we were putting an induction hob in, which is more efficient. So it's all of these
Save
things.
on the energy bill.
Yeah, well, we've got solar panels, which is obviously also a sort of circularity thing. We had those about 15 years ago. So it's one of the areas that if we can think in a circular way, and as you say, rather than just throw them in the skip, the fact that we were able to give them away to somebody else who would appreciate them, but also saves you money because you don't have to hire a skip and things. So it takes a bit more thought, but it's actually really important that we all start to think in a more circular way at home and in business, isn't it?
It really is. And I think, it's an important point that you made there. You mentioned about, putting them in the skip and things like that. And I think so many householders don't realise what they can actually do with items when, even if you were passing them on to a relative or a friend to reuse them, we're talking, a really broken item you might not keep hold of. The right way to dispose of that is actually to take it to a local authority tip, HWRC, as most in the industry will refer to it. But if you're a local girl, it's a tip. But effectively, they should be going in the right route. That ensures that they're going to go to the right facility and they're going to be treated in a way that electricals should. There's also, I don't know if you'll have heard of this, Material Focus. They run many campaigns throughout the WE industry, but there's also, they set up a Recycle Your Electricals network, and you can actually go on and you can put your postcode in, and you'll be surprised just how many retailers will take back old items as well. Yeah. So, your local Currys, Argos,
John
Smith's
Lewis.
Toys, John Lewis, you can actually go and take an item into most of those stores, especially if you're buying a new item. And that was one of the new changes. You asked me before about how the industry's grown. I think 3 or 4 years it'll be since now, whereby retailers had an obligation to take back in store. So some stores, even if you don't buy from them, they'll happily take your old item away. Some it'll be if you buy a kettle, you can bring your toaster back. So there's various different ways in which you can find a recycling point from your doorstep.
And in fact, that's really important, isn't it? That the people who produce or sell the product, there is a responsibility that when that product, has finished its life, that it is taken back and then reused, recycled, however it can be.
Definitely. And I think, from a producer point of view, I mean, Replica formed by a lot of the big producers in the industry. So Whirlpool, Hoover, Panasonic, there's many of them. Effectively, they all want to do the right thing as well. But the actual journey between selling an item and it coming back off the market can take many different directions. We engage with our producers on a regular basis, and they're always looking for ways to ensure that we're capturing more recycling, ensuring that we're advising, consumers to do the right thing. And like you've said, pass on to a relative, and really kind of, if you look back 50 years, it was commonplace that if you're going into a new property yourself, you're setting up home for the first time, you'd get somebody's hand-me-down, somebody would pass you. And I think we are, as a society, we're coming much more back to that way of thinking. But there's always more work to do.
Yeah, no, it's fascinating. And obviously, some people, the tip or the skip obviously will probably go a lot to landfill. But then you also have people, I see sofas and things that have just been fly tipped and televisions and things. So that sort of illegal tipping can also be a problem, can't it?
And we have quite a large network of local authorities we work with. And so to give you a little bit of insight on that, most of the HWRCs, pretty much all of them, will have a designated place that you can take fridges, place that you can take all your small electricals. They all go, they're all managed by a compliance scheme. So if it's not Replica, it'll be one of the other competitors that we have. We'll actually ensure that is collected and paid for. So it's responsible recycling from the local authorities. We service many of them. 2/3 pretty much in Scotland, for example. And all of those skips will go to a suitable treatment partner, and it'll be recycled in the correct way. I think where there is a danger is where people will use unlicensed recycling services, people that claim to take an item
Man in a
to.
van.
Yes, this is it. And I think that is something we're trying to very much close down on, because we want to make sure that, there's so much there's so much in an item that is worth, there's a lot of worth in each one. You look at the cable challenge that we've got with the International E-Waste Day, and the value that we can get from those items, not us personally, but as a country even, rather than putting them in the ground, putting them in landfill, or even just lying in a field for it to rot over many years. As a country, we have got to clean up our act a little bit, and we've got to get away from that fly tipping mentality.
Yeah, I mean, I loved coming to the Waste Management Expo in NEC. For those listening, it's definitely worth a visit. It's always good, as I find as a vet, to go outside the industry and see what's happening, because there's always good ideas there. And I saw your advertisement before I went to the expo, so I did take some cables down. So
that's really good.
How has the cable challenge been going?
It's been received really well. The Cable Challenge is obviously an initiative that we've been running with Material Focus. Material Focus have got many people on board to encourage people to go rummaging through the drawers, collecting the cables, the typical drawer of doom that holds so many valuable, cables that you might hold on to and say, well, you never know when I might need this one charger, and that charger's probably been sat there for the last 20 years, like myself.
Yeah.
But it's been going really well. We the RWM Expo that you came along to, we set up one of the boxes and we invited people to bring cables along. That was in the run up to International E-Waste Day. What we've been doing since then is we've managed to speak to many different companies that we wouldn't always speak to. People that aren't necessarily producers, and we've deployed. As I speak just now, 200 boxes to different facilities to encourage them to capture the cables, not just cables, if there's small electricals as well. So we're hopeful. We always like to kind of celebrate International E-Waste Day as more than one day. So we've got the campaign running up to it and the campaign straight after. So we'll have those boxes in locations for probably the next 3 months to ensure that there's a carbon element. You're sending a collection box out there. You don't want them coming back half empty. We're trying to get that message across to everybody, to obviously some of your listeners, but the wider industry and other industries outside of and waste management, to really kind of have a think about waste that's beyond paper, cardboard, and things like that. Really think about the electrical side of it, and let's try and declutter everybody's cupboards at home. Bring those items back. And as I say, 200 boxes we've got out there as of this morning. And I've no doubt as the time goes on, we'll exchange those boxes and, we'll increase on that number. In terms of the actual weight, I think we'll probably wait to see what they all come back with. But those boxes can hold around 300 to 500 kilos for some of the boxes that have gone out. So we should recover a decent volume that we wouldn't necessarily have covered in the past. They may have sat in those drawers for the next 5 or 10 years.
Yeah, no, it's brilliant, and I know, having been to your stand, been to the conference as well, it was really interesting to go over to the Royal Mint, because of course they also repurpose, but then also, as you were saying before, take the palladium off, take the gold off. These can be reused again, and it's massively important. So we're hoping that as a veterinary industry, with support of some of the wholesalers and so on, that we can be collecting some computers and other items in. I'm not sure that anybody will be bringing fridges in, but computers and iPhones and iPads and things are all, tablets are all important, aren't they?
It's surprising, isn't it? Because I think, I was thinking about before we came onto this podcast, and I was thinking, how relevant really is the veterinary industry in terms of, what we're working on. And I was mulling it over actually over the weekend. And I actually thought, well, if you think about it, every industry has some form of technology that they're working with, whether it's a computer, a camera, a photocopier. And then even if they're not even if they're not reliant on those types of equipment, everybody's got a kettle or a fridge in the staff canteen.
Yeah.
You know, there's always something, a plug or a battery within most organisations. And I think I was quite pleased that you'd obviously asked us to do this, because I think if we open this up to more sectors, you know, you're very akin to the health service and the NHS, and we work with a couple of the partnerships in the NHS in terms of collections, and they can be, you know, medical fridges. There is so many different possibilities that we can help with, and also, you know, if you look at the producer name, so without naming any names, but you only have to look at the producer name on the fridge to work out the likelihood is they'll have a producer obligation. So there's business waste and there's consumer waste, and we deal with both. So there's a strong likelihood that some of the veterinary clinics will have a fridge in there, or it could be an X-ray machine, or even like the tablets, because we're much more modern now. But if you think of they've all been made by someone, and that producer, the manufacturer of that item, has an obligation to fund the sound recycling of that item. So the one bit of advice I'd say to the veterinary clinics is that, you know, everybody's got a budget. We're all looking at, you know, how much things cost. And if you're concerned about how much it would cost to get a collection in the clinic, always look back at who the manufacturer is of the item and see if they will collect for you, because sometimes it'll be written in a contract or agreement that they'll come back and take that item away. It just needs us all to think that little bit further. And I think if you're not close to the details and requirements, it's so easy to assume that you'd be the one picking up the bill for the recycling, and that's not always the case.
And I think it's also maybe time for us to look at how we name things, because waste management suggests that it is a waste,
it
whereas
does, and
actually it's a resource, isn't it?
Yeah.
So
correct.
Resource management, I think, is almost, you know, that there's no such thing as waste. There's always value somewhere, isn't there?
Yeah. Yeah, you can tell you've been to the industry exhibitions. I'm pleased to hear you say that, actually, and thank you for picking me up on it.
Yeah, no. But it is just a mindset, because most of us do think in that way, don't we? That we still are a little bit of a throwaway society, but with all the fantastic work you're doing, we can actually start to collect more of this stuff. Because, you know, again, at the expo, I was talking to somebody, and as you've just said there, you know, the computer companies, they have a responsibility if they're producing to actually recycle a percentage, and that could be of competitors' computers, couldn't it? And even batteries and things.
Yes, yeah, exactly that. You know, battery producers, electrical producers, they all have a responsibility to ensure that they're funding the sound recycling of their goods. It can be done in many different ways. And as I say, you know, as a business, as veterinary professions, if you're struggling as to what to do with that item, the first step is obviously to have a look at the manufacturers of the product, see if there's anything written into the contracts, but then also have a look. You know, you might find that some of the items in the staff canteen, they might be dual use, kettles, toasters, and you may well find that there's a solution there where you don't have to pay. You know, by all means, contact Recycle Your Electricals, have a look on the Recycle Now web pages, but also, you know, reach out to a compliance scheme as well. And I think it's raising that awareness of the services that are on offer.
Yeah, and I think it's been really revolutionary for me to realise that this is all going on. And it was obviously because I did the certificate with Cambridge, but that there is actually a lot of work happening. But the general member of the public doesn't know about this, or the general vet in practice doesn't know about it. So how can we get that message out even more? Maybe more podcasts.
Yes, probably more podcasts. I think, you know, you look at what you've done yourself, Anthony, and you've come across to some of the trade shows. I think that to encourage the change in thought processes, trying to kind of get rid of the ignorance around it, and like you say, that thought that it is a waste. You know, we've got to look at things and be more resourceful. I mean, I think the last time I looked, I think it's like 14 million tonnes of e-waste globally is discarded each year. And if you think how much value is in those items and the volume, we can't be ignorant to it anymore. I think if we're doing more podcasts, if we're attending trade shows, I think you know, we look at COVID, everybody was working from home and things like that, but we're seeing since COVID and since everybody's kind of, you know, everything's a little bit more relaxed and in person, there's much more inquiries coming through from people that we might not have crossed paths with before. I think we've all got to be talking more and collaborating, with different types of businesses, and not kind of be too stuck within our own business and our own way of thinking. But yeah, as I say, I think some of the campaigns that we've got going on, International E-Waste Day, that was set up by the We Forum, so it's across Europe, so many companies involved with it, but we're seeing an increase on that every year as well. We're seeing more participants, more collections of we. So we hope, a combination of everything that we're doing just now from all actors within the sector, and all those that are affected, should help us, gain more traction and improve on what we're already doing.
Well, I'm hoping that the veterinary industry will also get behind you in the UK as we try and galvanise support over the next few months to get people to, because, I'm a great believer in saying that if we all do a little, it adds up to a lot. So if somebody sends back one computer that ends up either being repurposed, or we can take all the rare earth metals and we can recycle the plastic, that's better than doing nothing, isn't it?
It really is. And, there's not just the benefit of, it's doing the right thing, it's environmentally friendly. Often there's a financial benefit to it as well. You've really got to kind of look at this as, doing the right thing for many different reasons. We've got to think of, what's the next generation of children going to be looking at? Are they going to look at us for, turning our heads the other way and letting everything go to landfill? And I think it's... we've got to kind of change that mindset at a young age as well. So, the education system. But I do think as for the veterinary industry in itself, and I think what I'd like you to be reassured of is that many people, producers, compliance teams, we all want you doing the right thing, and we actually do want to help. So, we get many inquiries that come through that might not be from our members or from our local authorities, but we'll always try and help. We're all kind of in it together. We're all doing the right thing and all trying to work towards the same goal. So I would urge anyone that you've got there that if they're unsure, just to contact us, drop us an inquiry on the webpage, give us a call. And if we can't help, we'll point you in the direction of somebody that can.
Yeah, we'll put all the details of emails and things in the explainer underneath the podcast. Going to finish with a sort of pet hate. I'm in danger of upsetting some people, but the new problem, you solve one problem, you then end up with another problem.
Yeah.
We've worked really hard. I think less and less people smoking nowadays.
Yeah.
But they've turned to vapes. Vapes. I think if we took all the vapes and instead of seeing them thrown on the floor as people do, because it's a discardable thing. No, it isn't discardable. It has rare earth metals in it. I believe I saw a stat somewhere and I couldn't find it to repeat it. So forgive me. But if we took all the vapes and actually got the lithium out of them, we could make batteries for several thousand cars, electric cars each year.
Yeah,
so it's a massive, it's a massive problem because it's also plastic, which of course doesn't really degrade except over decades and centuries. So any thoughts? And they blow up in recycling
I was just going to
machines,
say, I think with vapes, so one, they are so costly in terms of recycling, and that's if you recycle them in the correct way. I'm pretty sure if we follow the kind of journey of a vape and what it goes on, that it probably goes to many different locations and in the wrong places before it ends up in the right place at a treatment facility. But the biggest problem with them, not just the cost, and especially with disposable vapes, we absolutely hate those. But effectively, if you think the danger of them is they've got a lithium battery in there, they can be very volatile. And, if they go into a refuse vehicle, if they go into a park bin, we've all got to think of our communities. There's children, there's dogs, there's, animals. There's so many people that come very close to what could be a very high risk and hazard within our communities. And I think if we were to, if you were to look online, the statistics of how many fires come off the back of a lithium battery, and, a lithium battery fire isn't just the element of, one vehicle that might be set on fire or a facility that it risks lives, but it also risks, livelihoods. People lose their jobs. facilities close, it disrupts the whole network of recycling. And I think, we could be looking back on this, and I think I referred to something similar before, but I really think we'll look back on this whole lithium battery issue in another 10 years, 15 years time, and we'll be horrified in the way we didn't react to it sooner. It really is a very urgent risk for not just our industry, but, our economy and our communities as a whole. I couldn't stress that, enough, that the lithium battery issue and putting them in the right place, and especially because vapes carry those lithium batteries, it really is an urgent issue for everyone.
So we've lost a certain percentage of sticky stubs, but we've ended up with plastic batteries, with batteries inside. Just for those who, because it's become a bit of a fashion thing, and I know I sound like a really old git.
No, it is. I've seen it myself. Yeah, it's my son's 18, and thankfully I've not seen him do it, but there are some of his friends. They see that as an accessory to whatever they're wearing on a Saturday night. They'll go with a certain flavour, they'll go with a certain colour, and again, like I say, it's a worry that is. That's the trend, and more so in that teenage 20-year-old generation. It's no longer something. It's not a mechanism to come away from smoking. It's actually now something to be proud of. Unfortunately,
some people have gone on to vapes having never smoked. And in fact,
correct.
My wife is a teacher, and even in junior school there are occasions where there's evidence of that, and of course it's a health risk as well. So any of you listening, I know I sound like your dad probably, but just stop vaping.
I'll sound like your mum. Yeah,
it's not good for your health, and
not clever.
It's not helping the environment either. So particularly if you've got an environmental bent, probably I'm not going to say go back to smoking, but just don't vape.
No, I definitely second that for so many different reasons. But yeah, you are right. You do kind of think to yourself, God, am I getting old and I'm banging on about something my mum and dad would have done? But I think we all see the dangers in it. I think it's changing habits again. It does come down to habit change, and again, another one that we'll look back on in a few years' time and go, wow, why didn't we act sooner?
Laura, the good thing is, when we look at a problem within the industry, we do the Veterinary Green Discussion Forum, and we very much look at the sort of See Judge Act, which was Cardinal Cardine's Young Christian Workers methods, and it's about looking at a problem, judging it, but then acting on it. And you're a living exemplar of that. You're acting on it. It's a huge problem, but it's great to have organisations like REPIC, like the Royal Mint, doing such a great job. We need to do more. But thank you for everything that you're doing, and for every cable that you pick up. It's one, as you say, one less piece that will be littering the environment.
No, definitely. And, I would probably say, I think when we first started this conversation, you asked about how long I've been in the industry. I'm really fortunate to have found myself in the industry that when we can really make a difference. It's a developing industry. It's one that I think, those teenagers that are vaping now maybe should be sat there thinking, what am I going to do with the rest of my life? Well, get yourself into recycling, get yourself into sustainability roles. They're the jobs of the future. And we can, if we all change our habits and our mindsets on things, we can make a difference.
Laura, thank you so much. It's been great speaking to you. It's always good to just listen to somebody outside of the industry doing great work that many of us will not even be aware of. And so from an educational perspective, you've educated me today. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you. And again, Anthony, hopefully we'll see you again at the trade show next year.
Definitely, I will be there.
Bring some of your colleagues from the industry along.
Exactly, yeah. No, it was real fun. So looking forward to it. Next September, hopefully, we'll all being well,
usually
be back and
every year.
Thanks so much, Laura.
No problem. Thank you, Anthony. Take care.
Thanks, everyone, for listening, and hopefully see you on a podcast or a webinar very soon. Take care and have a great rest of the day. And happy International E-Waste Day. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you.